Okay, we have returned from a closed session. The closed session dealt with the evaluation of our city manager. I've been authorized by the council to characterize our evaluation. We won't go into great detail. Let me start off by saying that one of the big things that had to be taken into consideration during this evaluation was the fact that as a city we are extremely challenged right now financially, and so a lot of the resources that normally would be available to the city manager are not there right now. With that said, I would say that the overall evaluation on a scale of 1 to 5 was 5. And we had a few points that we brought up that could be improved upon, as in any situation, but in general, we want to make it clear that we're extremely satisfied with the work that Mark Bradigan has been doing. We appreciate what he's brought to the city, and we look forward to working with him in the future. Thank you, Mark.
Can I just add, this list that you put together for us, could you post that on the website, or?
Yeah, please
is that
do.
appropriate?
All the accomplishments.
That's a good point. He came up with a list that we'll be sharing of all the different specific accomplishments he's done, and I know a lot of people don't have an opportunity to work with him and look around and say, well, why isn't this done or why isn't that done? But as I said, looking at the challenges that we face as a city, we're really excited about the leadership and look forward to working with him there.
I want to reiterate, it's hard to make sandwiches when there ain't nothing in the cupboard, so man's doing a good job.
With that in mind, we stand for the flag salute,
Your hat.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We didn't have a roll call before. Julie, would you give us a roll call, please?
Sure. Councilmember Shanta? Here. Councilmember Chrysler?
Here.
Councilmember Craig?
Here.
Mayor Bush?
Here.
And Mr. Spurlock will be absent.
And I think this will be
Excuse
your last,
absence.
he'll be back after this. Just to let you know, Saturday at 1 p.m., theater and COS graduation for the Firefighters Academy, and we will have one of our council members graduating as a firefighter. So I know I'm going to be there. Congratulations.
What time is it?
Saturday at the theater at COS.
Josh will be graduating the fire academy, so.
I know who we're talking about.
Booyah.
For the time.
1 o'clock.
When,
Okay, approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I second it.
First and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved. Approval of the minutes. We have the corrected minutes from March 15, 2018, and we have the April 25th, 2018. Do I hear a
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes, both of the corrected from March 15th and from April 25th, the special meeting.
I second it.
second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So moved. No presentation to go over. Committee reports. Economic development and tourism. Right now, we're waiting on information coming in from the chamber about development that we're working on east of the airport. We have that going on right now, and we're also going to be scheduling a meeting in the next couple of weeks with the Economic Development and Tourism Committee. We haven't come up with a date for that yet. At the same time, we're also working right now on putting together a video, sort of a advertisement, if you will, for visiting Dunsmuir. And this is something we'll be working on with Siskiyou Media Council, which will be a prototype for all the cities, but we'll get the first one. We'll be getting pictures of people fishing, the different restaurants, doing all that, putting it together. And so we'll get a chance to get that out. Nothing else on that? Anything from Finance Committee?
Yes, the Finance Committee met
Last week?
last Friday and is meeting again tomorrow, right?
Yep.
To basically a preliminary review of the budget. And it was one of our first opportunities to see our new finance director in action, and that was very pleasing to everyone because let's see, we did general fund review last week, and we'll do another brief review of that tomorrow, as well as enterprise funds. I don't have to reiterate the budget situation. The city doesn't have a lot of money, but there are a lot of positives in the general fund as well. It looked like, you know, the TOT and the transaction, or the sales tax, all of those things are still trending upward. which is good, it seemed. Is it okay if I give a brief summary of the score assessment situation?
Well, it hasn't, it's going to the board, it hasn't been approved.
Okay.
Yeah.
For anyone who's been paying attention in the last year or so, we've all been sort of sounding the alarm of sort of why, and one of the reasons why we don't have a lot of money is because we had a major assessment from SCORE, which is the city's, essentially the city's self-insurance organization. And essentially they, you pay your premiums every year, and if you have claims against the city, they sort of tally all that up, and hopefully your premiums cover all that, but when it doesn't, because it's not real insurance, it's self-insurance, when it doesn't, you get an assessment, so you gotta pay more basically. And we had many sewer backup claims and various other types of claims throughout the years, and they assessed the city to the tune of about, I think, $290,000 or 200 something thousand. And so we entered into a 5-year payment plan for that with increasing payments. This next fiscal year, starting July 1st, is the 5th year of that payment program, which is great, but it meant that our payments went from $20,000 to $40,000 to $60,000, and then we were at like $80,000 or $90,000 for a payment coming up. Plus, we got the news at a recent SCORE meeting that there will be a further assessment coming. So what we're proposing to the SCORE board, and are very hopeful and I think is likely that the board will approve, is for us to take what's left and the additional assessment that's coming and essentially do another payment program for that over 4 years, and it's only about $20,000 a year for maybe 20 or 30,000. So it basically really, thanks to the finance director and to Mark for helping get that going, and it really helps our financial picture, in my opinion, over the next few years, and makes it much less burdensome, the SCORE assessment. So that's a very positive outcome, hopefully.
While we're on the finance, I thought I'd take this opportunity also, I know he's sitting in the wings back there. Why don't you step up and just let people see who you are? This is our finance director, Blake.
Blue Superman.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Okay, next, public facilities and services. Has not been, I assume? Okay, airport committee. Mark, you want to go over where we stand with that right now? Okay, well, basically, right now, we're, why don't you take it? Because you have the latest on that. I'm sorry, you have more of the details on it.
Well, we're having an airport committee meeting on the 29th at noon here in the council chambers. One of the things that we're going to be discussing is an update on the airport layout plan, which is something that the city entered into just over a year ago to look at what the airport's future could look like. And there was also an airport or pavement management plan that was completed not too long ago as well. So both those plans, well, the airport pavement management plan is done, the airport layout plan is close to being completed, so we're going to have an update on that. Let's see, we're also just in the process of getting grants towards an engineering plan for possible runway repavement. And that's in the works right now. And at each one of the airport meetings, the airport committee meetings, we talk about sustainability. At least for the past probably 6 months, it's been an item of discussion, which goes back to earlier the mayor was talking about development to the east of the airport. That's one of the things that's been considered amongst other things. So we're looking for creativity there. So if anyone has ideas about sustainability for the airport, please join us at those airport committee meetings and help us out.
And we're going to be getting back to the Tuesday meeting, so the May 29th meeting will be at noon here in the council chambers, and we'll be returning here. We had switched over to a Friday for a while council member Spurlock was on the fire academy, so we could make it. But looking forward to that meeting. Okay, next, emergency plan task force, I need to report. Okay, Veterans Memorial. I've reached out to Sheriff Loki about getting an honor guard lined up so we could have not as elaborate as we had last year with the 3 different sites, including the parade in the middle. But what we're going to try and do is just have a ceremony at the cemetery like we had last year. I'm not sure if we're going to do it on Sunday or Monday. That's what I'm waiting to find out. Memorial Day coming up, right? So either the Monday or the Sunday before. And if we do it the Sunday before, I'll make sure that we line it up so that the event is held after the services are over, so people who want to make it from the church services on Sunday can make it. But it'll basically be a repeat of what we did at the cemetery last year and just redo that again this year. So I'll let people know what's going on once we get further information. I know it's short notice, but we'll pull it together. Mossbury Trail.
I have a memo for the council. This is from Tom Hesselman because I invited him as well. I invited Tom to the meeting tonight and he wasn't able to attend, so he wrote a little memo. I'll put a couple extra copies here. I'll just briefly summarize it. Mark and Tom had a very positive call with the Union Pacific Railroad. I believe it was mostly from the engineering department.
Right, we have real estate there.
Real estate as well? Okay, that's very good news. Essentially, they've reviewed the proposal that the council gave to them and are asking really good questions about it. The kind of questions that lead us to believe that the project is moving forward in their minds. Really questions around the details, and Tom was essentially able to answer all of those questions along with Mark. Just briefly, they had questions about fencing. They were hoping for a fence the entire way on the east side of on the west side of the river, the east side of the tracks. There are some potential safety concerns as well as wildlife route concerns there that Tom made them aware of, and I believe those issues are being resolved on UP's end. The main areas where fencing makes sense, that's still in the proposal, but there's a couple others. Tom's assessment was that they didn't quite realize, and this is, the real estate department and engineering back in Omaha, so they can look at it on a map, but they didn't really see it in person, how steep it really does fall off in some spots. Another part was that the proposed trail proposed to cut through some of the riprap, which is basically just means big boulders, I believe, that is already in place there. And they were concerned that that might jeopardize the structural integrity through there. And so essentially, Tom has reconsidered that part of the proposal and is redoing that. It won't affect the budget or the timeline, but it'll essentially just sort of go over that riprap and around it in certain areas. So that's really, really promising. Let me just read the last paragraph here. So he says, we ended the meeting with a discussion of a timetable and remaining tasks. I mentioned that ideally, this is Tom speaking, we would like to start construction in early September, squeezed between the end of bird nesting season and the onset of high water. End plan was a GIS consultant, essentially, is working on the CEQA and permits and feels we can make that deadline. UP will work on a lease similar to the one at Tom Valley Park, and they felt that they could fit the timetable as well. So that's really promising.
Good job, guys.
Thank you. One other thing is that we are also hoping to, try to think of how much I can say here, but there are other potential financiers of the project, essentially. We know we have about half the money raised through a private funder, donor, yeah. And there is interest from another private donor that at this time wants to remain anonymous, but probably won't be forever. And so we're working to organize another high rail trip for them. It would essentially be probably just one truck, essentially. So, and I think 2 representatives from that organization. And so that hopefully is gonna happen in the next month or so. I just got an email today. Francisco always seems to email me right before the council meetings, and he must know that I have council meetings, with a response finally, that he's working on organizing the trip. So I don't know when exactly that'll be. Marty, I'll try to see if I can get you on there.
Thank you very much, so you don't have to ask you.
But,
Maybe my only last possible,
but yeah, that's the update for now.
Right on, dude.
One question I have that we
Yes.
haven't really addressed as far as I remember is we haven't really talked at all about how we're gonna handle the increased parking at Hedge Creek there. You know, you look at there's a little bit we can squeeze out of that area that's parking right now if we can work with Caltrans to get a little bit more over in terms of closer to the ramp, but that's still a limited amount of parking, so that ought to be something we have to start looking
I
at.
kind of thought that when, it was suggested, but once we get the trail going, that we could maybe shuttle and have parking up at the airport.
Forever.
That was a possibility of something.
Shuttle.
I also
That's what's
wondered-
mentioned. I don't remember where. it
From
comes
the intersection where Dunsmuir Avenue curves around there, start to go on the freeway, but the start of Mott Road there, there's not a huge shoulder on either side of the road there, but I do wonder if people could just park up Mott Road there.
well, it's still Dunsmuir Avenue, but
There's certainly enough space there. Maybe restructuring that might create more usable space for parking.
That's what I was
So I
saying.
think that working with the county, working on that, creating parking spaces in some way rather than open areas tends to get a little better usage.
How about charging $1 to park at the ballpark? If there's
Yeah, I'm just saying, I'm not trying to resolve it now, we need to add that to our to-do list.
There are ways to create revenue. out of
I
this.
think that's a great point, and as the, you know, there's not a whole lot for the city to do right now while the engineers and everyone is working. That is one thing that the city could at least begin to talk about, so I agree.
So do you want to take that up under Moss Break Committee?
Certainly.
Okay. Great, then we can move on, broadband. I can report on broadband, we just had a meeting today.
We don't have it yet.
No, we don't have it. Okay, so let me give you an update on the broadband situation. We had a contract along with Weed and Mount Shasta where we contracted with a company called CTC out of Washington DC to do a study of the area and come up with an analysis of possible ways that we could bring fiber speeds to our 3 communities. The information we got was pretty detailed, and we've gone over it. They're going to be making a presentation to the cities within the next month so that the cities will be able to get an understanding of all the data and where we stand. The challenges we face in general, I'll make this as quick as I can, but the general challenges come down to 2 things. One of them is to come up with the money that would be necessary in order for the city to get involved in actually laying fiber line to the homes. And so the challenge of coming up with that money is one whole huge impediment to moving forward. On the other hand, there's also the problem that in each of the areas we're talking about, there is an incumbent, if you will. So we have Northland Communications, Northland is up in other areas too, and there's a CalOR coming down that's in parts of Mount Shasta. And so the whole idea right now is that we're at a loss because to come up with the $10 or $15 million per city that it might cost to do this, to lay the thing, we would have to also then compete with the existing people in play, and that makes it almost impossible, it seems. On the other hand, there is a new effort that's coming out of Chico Economic Development Group, Chico State Economic Development Office. And Ed Valenzuela, our supervisor, reached out to me and said, make sure you contact these folks. They were working a little while ago in trying to develop a North State initiative to bring broadband to the rural communities. That kind of died off, and now there's a new initiative, and so we're going to try and see this group of stakeholders, the people from Weed, Mount Shasta, and Dunsmuir, are going to try and meet with them to see if there's some way that they might be able to change the balance we have right now. So those are the things we're exploring, and the reason we can't come up with an instant solution is because of the cost and because of the fact we have to deal with existing people who could price us out of that. Would you agree that's pretty much what we had there, Mark, at the meeting today? Any questions? Okay, so that's kind of where we stand on that. Beautification.
Tim Holt, Chair of the Beautification Committee. I can't help adding just one thing on the shuttle. We were talking about real quickly. Consider a shuttle from downtown Dunsmuir. That's great. So you have people, kind of congregating downtown, checking out our shops and restaurants,
Where did they park?
then going,
Where did they park?
downtown.
That's the whole thing.
I'm just throwing it, we don't need to get into it right now, just an idea,
Thank you, Tim.
throw it out. Anyway, beautification committee, so we had a unanimous vote at our meeting yesterday in favor of a new project. It has not, of course, come
I
before
beg
the,
to differ, it was not a unanimous vote.
can I finish my sentence? In favor of establishing a living Christmas tree for Patty Hill. I think a lot of you in this room know who Patty Hill was, not all of you do. She made a wonderful contribution to our community in various ways. So I think you're gonna be hearing from Jimmy Limo, her significant other, about this idea. So, that'll be coming down the road. I thought it was unanimous vote.
Yes, it was, and I apologize to you.
Okay. I know what you're referring to, though. So I'm also authorized on a 3-to-1 vote to request that the council consider another building facade inspection of our historic district. As some of you know, Bryce certainly does, we've had 2 of those inspections. They have resulted in 90% compliance, fixing up, painting, crumbling walls or whatever, crumbling tile, and a much improved downtown. And if you want to attract tourists and all that, you've got to keep your downtown up. So what we're talking about here, and Mark can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it just required, a city council member to request that this be put on the agenda, is that correct or not?
Either the mayor, so that the beautification is reporting to the council, and the council can ask to have it placed on the next, I'm sorry. So the council at the meeting, if so choose, could ask to have it placed on the next agenda.
At this meeting, it's
At this
possible.
meeting or a future agenda.
Okay, all right. So I don't know if there are any questions about that. It's kind of a general one. We're still working on. Bryce had some ideas about how at a previous meeting, how this inspection committee should be staffed. And I think obviously that's going to be up to the council. So, anyway. Okay, that's pretty much it for now. I do want to briefly express a little disappointment, and I think all of you about one thing. You all know Reverend Bob Aulo, who's kind of taken ownership of Centennial Plaza, has all these great plans for it, got the fountain going and so forth. And he wanted to have a May 5th kind of modest celebration, which I think would consist of turning the fountain on, having a little music, having maybe what you would call a cornerstone, sell some pastries outside and some slice of peaches. Very modest thing. And because of our screwy insurance litigation society, we couldn't do it. Now, I know I'm not blaming anyone or casting any aspersions, but I'm just throwing this out. Isn't there something wrong about this in some way, that just having some people get together and have a little celebrations over it, we can't do that? It's just, something's wrong with that picture. So I hope it's something that, as a city that wants to get things done, we can work on in the future. I think that's my report. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, Tim.
Okay, next item.
Sorry, one thing.
Yeah.
My understanding is that
What's right
if
here?
we want to place items brought, that the beautification committee or any other asks that the council take up,
Place on a
that
future
we
agenda?
should do that on a future agenda, not on tonight's agenda,
Correct.
right?
That's it.
If it were added tonight, it would have to be an emergency, considered an
Correct.
emergency
Can't be on
item.
tonight.
And, but yeah, so, okay, thank you, that's all.
I guess I should say, before we move on to this item, is that regarding the tree, the living tree, I did get an email from Lori Sturtevant, probably mispronouncing that,
That's
asking that
really
I mention her passing, and I think it's a great idea, so thank you. Okay, next item then, Cannabis Task Force, and I know this has got a lot of people wondering what's going on with this, so update.
Mark, can you provide an update?
The Cannabis Task Force, formerly known as the Marijuana Task Force, is kind of on a holding pattern. It's been a while since the task force has met. We're currently waiting on getting the draft ordinance from the city attorney. I was told last week that he should get a draft to the city this week, so I'm expecting to see something by tomorrow. If not, I'll give him a call. There has been pressure on John to do this. And he's working on it. I know I've called before, and he's actually had the photo of what we have on the wall there, and he's working on how to do the language for the zoning. So I know he's working on it, but we haven't received the draft yet. As soon as I get the draft, I will schedule the next marijuana or the cannabis task force, and we have a few items that will need to be placed on there. Another item that John is working on is the language for the possible sales tax measure for the November election as well.
What about applications?
Applications have been done. Craig Kay, one of the cannabis task force members, actually was able to modify the applications from the city of Shasta Lake to fit the city of Dunsmuir. So those are all set. I've actually got copies printed out on my desk, ready to go to the...
Are we going to ask the consultant or the potential consultant to review those? They can review them. Originally, when I was talking with the consultants, it was to come up with the application. Right.
And they gave a kind of an estimate of what that would be. So we don't need that anymore, but as part of setting the fees, they'll need to see what our applications look like.
Mark, would you share with everyone what you shared with me about the benefit we're getting out of our city attorney because of his position, having done this with other cities?
Sure, absolutely. So John Kenny, I would consider John as one of the authority attorneys in possibly the North State in the governmental side of things in regards to the cannabis, mainly because of his workings with the city of Shasta Lake, and he's also working with the city of Mount Shasta. And the city of Dunsmuir has been reaping a lot of benefits from that, in that a lot of the work that's been done at these other cities have been kind of carried over to the city of Dunsmuir at a very, very minimal cost. And with what he's doing right now, it's a little different because this is specific to the city, where he's having to go in there and craft the language to fit something that is, uniquely Dunsmuir. So that's where things kind of slowed down, because it's very specific to us, where I feel fortunate that up until this point, we've been getting a lot of the rewards of him working these things prior to these other cities. And if anyone doesn't realize, the cost that we pay for legal counsel is very favorable to our budget currently. So I feel fortunate that we have John working on this. I know he has also a new secretary and some new staff he's working with too, so he's probably pretty busy as well.
I would just add that specifically the tax measure stuff is something that we would have had to hire SCI or consultant to do, and so that's a huge cost savings to have, not only not to have to pay John to do the whole thing since he has that experience, but not to have to pay a consultant to do it as well. So
That's right.
Okay, with that in mind, we'll move on to public comment. If anyone has any public comments, the podium is open now. Please step forward and state your name and your comments.
Can I do it from here? I'm Richard Dingest with the Dunsmuir Chamber of Commerce, and we're going to be having the citywide yard sale coming up next weekend, not this coming one, but the next one. It's going to be for 4 days. Some people have signed up from Friday to Sunday. It's $5 to get on the map. Got to have all the applications in by Saturday, by 3 o'clock, so we can get the map done by next week, and then we want to get it out to those folks that have already asked for it. So just to let you know, if anybody wants to get on the map, please come into my office and pick up an application. And it's $5. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public, my name is Peter Arth, 5859 Sacramento Avenue. Two items. One is having studied yesterday's newspaper, I didn't see that Dunsmuir was doing anything at all to honor our veterans on Memorial Day, and that saddened me. Because I think Dunsmuir needs to do much more to honor our veterans. It leaves me with two suggestions. One, that perhaps we take a moment of silence sometime during your meeting tonight to honor the veterans that have sacrificed for our country. The second, somewhat larger suggestion is that the meeting you're talking about with John Lope also include members of the Southern Siskiyou Veterans Leadership Council, Steve from the Dunsmuir Community Resource Center, the two of you and Mr. Dinges, who are on the Veterans Committee, with the notion we can and need to do much more for our area veterans. We meet regularly at the community center on both the community garden issue and dealing with hunger in our community, and also on providing more resources for veterans. So I hope when you schedule your meeting, whatever we do on Memorial Day, it's going to be under-publicized, and I think that's too bad. Moving forward, we need to do more. The second issue is I did attend the Beautification Committee meeting yesterday afternoon, chaired by Tim Holt, and the 3-1 vote he referred to, the agenda item was to historic district building inspection, and for the 4 members of the committee, 3 citizen members said the city needs to do something about whether it's a residence or a commercial building. If someone's not keeping up their building, the city needs to step in and enforce its laws. The position of the 1 no vote, Councilmember Shanta, is the city has no role in this. If I happen to be burdened with a building in the historic district next to one of my buildings, and it's full of trash and rats, and has garbage and bags at the back door, the suggestion from Councilmember Shanta is that I don't go to the city and the city manager and the enforcement people. I go to the chamber. And Mr. Dinges is supposed to deal with getting that 10% of the building owners that refuse to comply with our laws. Somehow Mr. Dinges is supposed to get rid of the rats and the garbage and the transients. So I strongly support what Chairman Holt recommended to you in his report. You've got nothing on your agenda tonight, but could we please place on the agenda for the next meeting, is the city in the business of enforcing its codes or not? If it's not, what are people like me or residents that happen to have a slum building next to them supposed to do? The notion is the city just looks the other way and says, we don't have any money, we don't have any staff, we don't have any time, you're on your own. I don't think for the citizens and the businesses that are trying to grow here, that works. So I hope you start to discuss this for the balance of the year. There were all these exercises about visioning. I don't hear about visioning anymore. There are all these exercises about priorities. I don't hear about priorities anymore. But the notion that the city will turn its back on its citizens and businesses, that's not okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a brief?
No go backs. No, I'm kidding.
Well, this is just to kind of emphasize what Peter just said, which is that if we don't do these inspections and kind of get some of our property owners to improve their facades in their buildings, it's really unfair to the property owners who do keep their buildings up. You know, essentially you're saying, yeah, let your property values decline and so forth. We're not going to step up and make sure that everybody follows the rules. So, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Any other public comments? Okay, I close the podium to the public. public. Ms. Shanta, you're
Yes,
first.
I would like to have a little clarification on Mr. Arth and my role in the beautification meeting, and you took totally everything out of context as to what was being discussed. You actually walked out of the meeting before the vote was even taken. So, you know, the result of the vote is correct, but I even asked you to not, you know, walk out of the meeting and answer me, and you briefly answered me and you walked out. Totally misconstrued my participation. There was nothing discussed about garbage and having the chamber deal with that. And for you to take what the meeting was and turn it into something that was not is really shameful on you, Mr. Arth.
Mr. Mayor, can we, may I say something?
Yes.
I couldn't attend the division meeting yesterday, but sounds like there was a lively discussion. I just want to, I'll take some time at the end of the meeting to add those two items to future agenda. We don't have to do it now, but it sounds like there needs to be more discussion about this. I'd like to have happen at the council at a future meeting. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Did you want anything else besides that particular item to talk about?
No, I just needed to have a rebuttal to Mr. Arth makes all sorts of
Sure,
statements without some clarification. You know, he just totally mischaracterized what happened at the meeting because he walked out.
Mr. Keisler.
Protocol would be the city manager would go before council members. So I would ask that the city manager has anything to be more clear than what I have to say. So,
Let's keep going. We're just going to go with the council members.
Okay. First of all, I would like to take this opportunity to personally congratulate Ms. Ann Powers again for her Alexander Dunsmuir Recipient of the Year. I feel that nobody more deserving should have got that award. So, I would also like to congratulate the recipients of the Citizens of the Year. They were both deserving as well. We've had a couple of tragedies in town. One, my heart, this council member's heart goes out to the Jones family. A member of their family was murdered, and no matter how you slice it, it's just not right when somebody takes the life of another person, especially when it's a Dunsmuir. So, my heart goes out to the Jones family. On another note, for those of you that haven't heard yet, there's one of my good friends, Larry, works at the hardware store. He passed away today about 2:30. He had some health complications and he could not come out of it. He passed away in his sleep, in his coma, no pain, just went to see the Lord. So my heart goes out to that family too. If anybody knows him, I'm sure that his wife could use a hug. Okay, let's change the tune a little bit. I'd like to announce that most of you people probably don't know him, but we have a kid that goes to our high school by the name of Joey Plummer. Pretty proud of this boy. He happens to be one of my grandson's friends, and he's kind of like a pretty good mentor, you know. But Dunsmuir picks one kid to go to the All-Stars and play on June 16th in Reading. And that kid was Joey Plummer. So he'll be going down, the Rotary stepped up and going to help sponsor him. And he'll be playing in the All-Star game in Reading on June 16th. If anybody's interested, we're going to form a Joey crew and go down and support him. He's supporting our town. I figured we could go down and support the kid. So Saturday night from 4 to 8 at the ball field, the Community Resource Center. Steve is putting on a barbecue. It's free. I invite you all to come. There's going to be some great games. It's going to be a good time. I think there's some music. I know there's food. Again, there's food. So it's at the ball field, 4 to 8, it's free. I invite everybody to come out, meet your neighbors, meet the other people in town, and have a good time. There's been some talk of 1727. There will be a public hearing, but we're going to be doing some work. The idea is to take the trees down around 1727 and show it off once again. We're going to weld the window shut, put some bars so you can't take things off of it, but you're going to actually be able to climb on it, take pictures. We'll put the lights on the wheels at Christmas time like we used to do. We're Train Town, USA, and we got a train locked up in a little jail. I'm on a mission to parole 1727 and restore it to its glory and let the people show it off and be proud of it again. And more on that in the future meetings, I promise. And then on a good note, my soapbox derbies will be June 10th, which is Sunday. It will be from 9 to 1 for the kids and 1 to 3 for the adults. That way it doesn't conflict with any of the other things that are going on throughout the weekend. And we're going to make arrangements to where the first races will be all the children of the church. We're going to call them the Holy Rollers. We're going to give them a chance so that they can get out of their system and go to the church. And I've asked Reverend Daniel to say a community prayer before the races start that day. So everybody gets a taste of the soapboxes. We don't offend the church people. And then I got some adults coming up from other cities. 1 to 3, it should be pretty entertaining. So of course, everybody should come up and watch the soapbox derbies. Mr. Mayor, thank you for letting me ramble. Those were my announcements, and thank you for the time.
Thank you. Mr. Craig?
I don't have anything. We just have some items to add to the agenda, but I can do that at the end.
Okay. I'm going to wait for mine until afterwards, Mr. City Manager.
I would just like to announce that the sidewalk project, where we just, at the last council meeting, the special meeting, requested a resolution for SB1 funding. We got word back from the state architect that the project has been approved.
Cool.
Today, Blake was telling me he saw some engineering people out looking at the project, so we expect to get some bids. And hopefully some new bus shelters and sidewalk and handicap ramps and stuff around the civic area here.
Would you share your vision of how this becomes sort of the transportation hub here?
Yeah, well, one of the things that started this project was working with the LTC, and they have a RSTIP program that was looking to benefit transportation. So the communities that are part of Siskiyou were competing for grant funds. The city of Dunsmuir put an application in and received $35,000 of the funds. I think it was also Happy Camp might have got some funds as well. But that was the beginning of the project. We also last fiscal year got monies from SB1. It wasn't much because the bill just passed, but we also applied for this year's SB1 funding. So now we have enough to do curb sidewalk from the Mexican restaurant down to where that parking lot is to the
U.S. Bank?
well, just on the City Hall side, from the Mexican restaurant down to City Hall. And there's going to be the 88 crosswalk section over there by the Mexican restaurant. And also in front of U.S. Bank, section from the parking lot over to the 88 ramp as well. So we're looking at a large bus shelter, similar to what's at Children's Park over at the parking lot by City Hall, and a semi-seat over by U.S. Bank. So it's going to really centralize the locations and make it more visible for pedestrian safety and easier for the bus to get in and out. It's kind of the central hub for the city.
Okay. That's all. Did you want to talk at all about bottling?
I would just say that at a prior council meeting, during closed session, direction was given for me to work with the highest and best proposal for the lease for the bottling facility. Those negotiations are ongoing. There is some exciting movement that I'm hoping will transpire into a lease. The goal that I'm hoping for is that we have a lease to the city council in June. So that's the goal.
And would you explain that it's really between the two other players at this point?
Well, there's two parts of the negotiations. The one that the city has any kind of control over is the negotiation of the lease. But due to the circumstance of the existing facility and what the prior leaseholder had, or has all this equipment and assets in the facility, there's negotiations between the new potential leaseholder and the old leaseholder. So they're working those negotiations through at present. And that it does impact the negotiations that we will have with the potential future leaseholder that we hope to bring the lease back.
And why is that important to the city public right now?
Well, the last year the city had a deficit budget of about $25,000 approximately. And that was assuming that we were going to get about $80-some thousand from the lease of the bowling facility, which we only received about $7. So that $25,000 deficit now goes to over $100,000 deficit. And the general fund reserves are not as robust to take that easily. So we're really looking forward to ensuring.
Having a robust.
What's that?
We're looking forward to having them robust.
Yes, we need
I like
stuff.
that.
Yeah, and one of the goals of the finance committee and staff is to have a general fund budget that is balanced. And currently, we are there. We have that. But again, that is predicated that we're going to have a lease to be receiving revenue from the bowling facility. So it's a very important revenue for the city, general fund. Very important.
Thank you.
I heard exciting, I heard negotiations, I heard balanced budget, so that's good.
Sergeant Miro.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of things going on. I just want to touch base on a couple of them. But I kind of want to start it out by introducing Deputy Ben Wetstein. We find out that our involvement in the community is growing and grow, that it's harder for one person to be wherever they need to be. Deputy Wetstein is going to be helping out with a lot more different things as they transition to the nights. He's going to be on days to kind of create more of a common base as we try to do more and more things with what we have left in the pot. I guess you know about that.
You got a sidekick.
I got a sidekick. Yeah. Although he's my hero partner. Just touch base on a couple different things. So 2,800 pounds of drugs was collected during our last drug take back. I still couldn't figure out how much of that came from Dunsmuir. I guess they didn't weigh it the same way. But a pretty significant amount of materials that went to the incinerator rather than going into the garbage, or even worse, into the ponds, or even worse, into somebody else's body. We are lined up for one of the permanent fixture boxes. I was promised we were going to be the first one in the county, but it did not work. Wairika somehow managed to sneak in there and beat us, so I'm still hoping for the first one in South County at least. If not, we'll be the first one in Dunsmuir for sure. So we'll try to do the best on that. The goal is, of course, it'll be in City Hall or the open area, the main chamber, so that whenever City Hall or the chamber is open, it'll be available for anyone to come and use. It'll be emptied regularly, so we don't have to worry about those kind of things. And it'll just be a normal place so that people don't have to wait so long. So we really are looking forward to be able to do that. Quick update, Neighborhood Watch. We're kind of looking at some restructuring, kind of backing up a little bit. We've kind of divided the area, Dunsmuir, into 8 basic areas. The mayor is very kind enough to kind of start working on that and kind of looking geographically, how do we structure the town. And then we can kind of look and start cultivating interest from citizens who live in that area to be better represented and within the whole. We have a lot of interest right now, of course, when people live in their areas. We just want to be able to spread that interest and kind of continue to work on that. We have had some interesting concern or interest, which is kind of how it comes up there, about a particular group of people in town. They occupy the building across up on the, it used to be, it was a little Episcopal church. And they're called Love Has Won. Deputy Wetstein's had quite a bit of contact with them in the past couple months, and I just want to give you an opportunity to just give you kind of a 2 or 3 minute little update on kind of who the people are, kind of what's going on there. so that you as a council can be more aware when you get asked those questions. So Deputy Bedstein, and then I'll finish the rest of mine as well.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome.
Thank you. So this address, it's 58 something, I can't remember what it is off the bat, but it's an address on Shasta. It's occupied by, I believe, between 15 and 20 people that are currently living inside that house. They go by Love Has One, they have a website. It's a group that's pursuing enlightenment, those types of things. But we've had, I would say since January 1st, between 15 and 20, actually between 10 and 15 calls for service at that house. Some involving incidents with children, others involving behavior that's disturbing the neighborhood, and others...
A dog.
I'm sorry?
A dog.
Yeah, well, I'm not familiar with that one, but yeah, it spans a wide range of complaints. How I first got involved with it was there was loved ones that were concerned about their relatives being involved in a cult. So this house is becoming an issue for the sheriff's office because of the frequency of calls that we get on it. So I've been talking to Sergeant Merrill about it and seeing if there's any way that we can start to address the problem. When we do show up, they are pretty responsive, but behaviors have not changed. So, but it is a growing concern for the sheriff's office. So I'm going to be talking to Sergeant Merrill more about it, see if there's anything else we can do.
Thank you. Appreciate your help.
Thank you.
Can I ask you a question? I want to make sure I heard you correctly. This is a one residential address that has 20 people living in it?
I believe there's between 15 and 20 people living in it, which includes several children.
Is that even legal?
That's a single residence
Yes,
house?
That's fire.
Yes, ma'am, that's one of the concerns that we're looking into. But they're turning into be kind of a nuisance for the neighborhood. They're generating quite a bit of
How
complaints.
can you fit that many people into a single residence? None of the houses around here are that big.
Part of our concern is we don't know who actually lives there. It's kind of, I'll say a transient house in that the people who occupy it currently are constantly change with this kind of ebb and flow. So we kind of track the people who seem to be there more often during those visits to see if it's a core group, and then others simply come and go for a short duration, and how that kind of structure is set up. So we're still trying to determine more the actuality of who is physically living there permanent versus maybe staying for a day or two as they go, to and from, which is one of the challenges and issues.
There seems to be a core leadership group in there. We've been challenged to find out what their names are. They go by Father Creation and Mother Creation. So it's, without getting into a whole lot of detail, it may or may not be appropriate here. I don't want to bash them, but just to say
I wondered if I heard you correctly. That
Yeah.
there were single residence, 20 people living in it.
yes, and I know that I've personally notified Child Protective Services a couple times regarding activity in there.
What was
So
the house?
Yeah, let's get beyond that now.
I just want to let you know that it was happening, so that as you started hearing some other movement, you would know about it first. Rather than
Okay, appreciate it.
Thank you. Anything else you want to start?
One of the other things, of course, is kind of continuing notes and updates. Through our special meeting that we had the sheriff, there was a very consistent request, the sheriff's office providing the weekly reports or updates. People kind of miss not seeing the sheriff reports for Dunsmuir in the paper when Mount Shasta there was Wheaton there, which is something very unique for us because that's just not something we've done in the past. Not just for Dunsmuir, it just doesn't happen in any of our contract cities. It's not something that the sheriff's office does at all. So it's been a little bit difficult for us to be able to do that, but you'll see in the paper this week that there was a little blurb at the top of that section. So it's just evidence sign that we do hear, we understand, we're trying to work through these, what I thought were very small processes to be able to allow that to happen. And I figured out my little gears are connected to much bigger gears that like to turn slower than I'm used to. One of our little gears, Deputy Bedstein, he's going to be working on that as well. So one of the things he's going to be doing is throughout the week is he's going to be making notes, little summations. That way we can work with the newspaper once we get through our PIO and kind of further detail this process so that can continue. So we'll continue, hopefully we more build and be a little bit cleaner, but you start to see some of that proof of evidence. Speaking of evidence, just a little bit of an update. We had some concern that was kind of brought forth on the Neighborhood Watch page specifically, but I had other contacts as well. Lots of information was going around town onto the particular cases that happened. One, the murder case involving Mr. Michael Hernandez, who was a suspect in that case, that he was out of custody, that he created some sort of alibi, he really turned into cops. There was some other information was factually just absolutely not true. So I just wanted to clarify that Mr. Michael Hernandez fled in a stolen vehicle. He was literally hunted down and captured. He turned himself into the cops, of course, rather than facing whatever the natural consequence of not wanting to do that would have been. He is currently in custody on $1 million bond, so he's not going anywhere. And then DA himself, Mr. Andrus, is personally pursuing that case, as well as being a major case with Barbara. We had a really good breakthrough in the case that Mr. Andrus asked me to specifically update the council and the city with. The young man flatly denied certain behaviors and activities that Barbara was adamant about. DNA and some other matching test results we were able to come back. We were able to confirm his presence and activity on some of those things. So it was able to very concretely confirm her account of the events and those kind of things, which makes for a much stronger case. I did take the opportunity to open the door to him, that if he wanted to come and maybe speak at the city council meeting just about his office and the process, I opened that door to him as well. If there are any questions or anything from the council, we're willing to take those as well, and there's a lot of information there.
Well, I commend you guys on the way you handled it though.
Same here.
Thank
Okay, thank you. Following up on the mention of the neighborhood watch, so what we're going to be trying to do, it's kind of got to the point where we have about a half dozen people show up here and kind of talk and stuff, but the idea we want to try and get about is to actually re-energize the way a normal neighborhood watch would be. And so the idea is that you don't say, well, I'm in North Dunsmuir, I'm in South Dunsmuir. You need to get more specific so that you get a smaller area. The people they have a social, they get to know each other, they learn. We were going to develop a telephone tree. All those things can't happen unless we get a little more granular. So at the next meeting, we'll carry that forward and then start reaching out to the people. I know that Lori gave me a list of the people in the past who have signed in and have their names and all that. So we'll be working on moving that forward. A couple of events I'd like to point out. On the 23rd, next Wednesday, at 5:30 p.m. in the high school will be a re-energizer for the town hall we had last year on hunger. The idea that we're trying to accomplish in this particular event is to reach out to not necessarily just the people who have some insecurity with food. We'll have a free meal there, we'll have daycare there, all of that. But we're trying to reach out to a layer of volunteers that can help us fill the gap in reaching out and meeting the needs of those who maybe are homebound or veterans or wherever else. So we're going to try and invite people who want to be part of the solution to hunger in the community. So I invite everybody to show up at the high school 5:30 next Wednesday for that. I also want to point out that on the 29th, which is Tuesday, at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers, Dr. Schoonmaker, who's the president of College of the Siskiyous, will be here as part of his countywide listening tour. And so anybody who'd like to learn some information, share your vision of how the COS fits into the community, please show up next on the 29th at 6 p.m. The last thing I'd like to say is kind of following up and giving a real quick sense of the challenge we face right now. We're coming up to the end of the fiscal year. June 30th is the end of the fiscal year. Next year, as we've already kind of talked about, the numbers look good and we have things moving in the right direction. But at this particular moment, as has been brought up by a couple of the challenges we're facing, we really are at a point where dollars are everything. And so the biggest challenge that we have, I'm sure everyone realizes, is code enforcement. And it's not like anybody here doesn't want to do code enforcement. We can't afford to pay anybody to do code enforcement right now. And when people say, well, what about the dogs? We can't say, well, let's get the sheriff's department right now to take care of the dogs. We're in a real challenge right now. And the challenge is to get through this period to the other part, and I think we'll be fine. But right now, those are the reasons why we can't do the things everyone wants to do. I've got a list of things I'd like to do, and I'm realizing a couple of those aren't going to be funded. So the bottom line is that everyone right now is trying their best to get through this situation, and I feel confident we will. With that in mind, we'll move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda.
I make a motion that we adopt the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passed unanimously. Next, no public hearing, no old business right now. I do take a moment to talk about old business because it was brought up earlier. Some people are saying we should have more old business on the agenda. And the fact that we don't have more old business on the agenda means we're not doing our job. We talked about this during the evaluation, and I think we all came to an understanding that one of the reasons we don't have a lot of old businesses is that our city manager has been doing a good job of getting it through one time and not having to bring it back.
There you go.
So I know that this person is working countless hours in there, and we're moving along on that. So with that in mind, we'll move to new business. The first thing on new business, A, beautification committee appointments. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. But before I get started, I just want to preface that anything that I bring is supported by the staff that Dunsmuir has. It's a wonderful staff. They work very hard. So thank you. So we have the beautification member, Catherine Wallace, has resigned from the committee's citizen seat, and the city staff began advertising the vacancy in the local paper and on our website for interested citizens to apply. The city advertised this vacancy for 2 weeks and received 1 letter of interest from Barbara Cross. That letter of interest is attached. Both the resignation letter and the letter of interest is attached. So it's up to the council if they would like to move forward.
Any questions?
How come Captain Wallace resigned? Was there
She didn't put it in her letter. I'm not sure if there's...
Any other questions before we open the podium to the public comment? I open the podium to public comment.
Tim Holthian. I certainly support the appointment of Barbara to this position on the beautification committee. She is in Spain right now. That's why she's not here herself. I'm sure it was a trip she booked some time ago and didn't know that there would be a conflict with the city council meeting. I just
She
wanna
didn't
mention-
care enough to fly back here for this meeting.
I know, well, you can take that as a sign of disinterest if you want. But at any rate, I'm going to say a few things. Most of you know, she, recently was the chair of the planning commission before she resigned. She was on the beautification committee as a member of the planning commission before she resigned from the commission. She has been involved, along with myself and Helen Cartwright, getting some of our murals up downtown, speaking of beautification. I believe she's been involved with the Siskiyou Arts Museum virtually from the beginning, and I think she is the president now, if I'm not mistaken, of the Siskiyou Arts Museum. What else? I think that's most of it. So I really can't think of anyone who's better qualified for this position. Thank you.
Any other comments? Close the podium to public comments. Comments from the council members.
I move we appoint Barbara to the beautification committee.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to be able to delay this until Barbara can answer a few questions. I'd like to know her motivations because she resigned from the planning commission and pretty much slammed the whole council for the very reason that she states here in our application to be wanting to be on the beautification committee. So
I would have to concur with
I
what
would
you
like
just
to be
said.
able to just delay this vote until she can answer some of these questions for me.
Mr. Keisler?
I agree with exactly what she said. She has some questions that need to be answered. What she said about this council and what she's applying for kind of got me a little concerned. So I do have some questions for Ms. Cross too. So I move that we table this until, is she going to be back by the next meeting?
I believe she's going to be back by tomorrow.
Okay. Can we table this till the June 7th meeting?
Mr. Craig, what do you think?
And then we could have an interview with the candidate?
You have a motion on the table, so I'm asking you, what do you think?
Well, the specific question that Marty brought up, I think is answered in Barbara's application. She says, I am very interested in the historic district and feel it needs attention and to become a tourist attraction and a good, difficult to read her handwriting, venue for our local businesses, I believe. She lists her experience. I do think she's extremely qualified. I mean, I have the same, I think I share your guys' frustration with previous comments you made, but my position is that Barbara is a long time, very dedicated resident to our community, and that is undeniable. And she's the only person that answered this call. We have an opportunity to appoint her to the committee. I don't have any reservations with doing that tonight. And if she isn't productive on the committee, the chairman and the committee can bring that to our attention. There are lots of people on the beautification committee right now who have disagreements, who have different projects they bring forward. Tim and I don't always agree on everything, but it makes for lively discussions. I think Barbara will be an addition to the beautification committee. I don't think there are really any unanswered questions here. She said some things about the council before. Who hasn't? I don't have any reservations with
Can I
it.
second what Russ just said?
No.
Well, you don't get a vote.
I'm still a no. So you got to do a yes and yes. You got to no or no. What do you want to do?
Can I ask you why? I mean,
I have some questions. Okay. You want to be honest?
yes.
I'm curious why Catherine resigned. Was she forced out?
I have
No, I can answer that, no. No, she
My
was
turn.
not forced
My
out.
turn. My turn. Okay, and then I see that all of a sudden you want to bring, you know what? Barbara's the one here that has to answer questions, not nobody else, and I'm just asking questions for her.
Okay, well, I think that your questions are totally valid. I don't mean to say that they're not.
So
If the question's about Barbara-
I'm comfortable appointing Barbara due to a feeling I have.
I understand. What I'm question, I do share your question about Catherine's resignation though, and if there is an answer to that question, I would be happy to know it, but in a moment, very protocol, thank you. But I agree, I'm not saying that Barbara, if you have concerns, that's fine, I don't.
If no objection, I'd like to let Ms. Powers kind of give us some more information here.
When
Ms. Powers,
Catherine
would you give
resigned,
the
I
floor,
asked
please?
her why she resigned, and she said she just had too much on her plate. She said she was doing too many things.
No scandal involved.
No, she said she was just doing too many things.
Okay.
And as far as I was concerned, she always participated in the discussions and was very productive and positive member of the committee. And so I hate to see Catherine go. I wish her well, Catherine. But I hope that we can find somebody to serve on the committee. I think we have a totally qualified candidate in Barbara. I think she would do a good job.
You're the chairman of that committee, right?
No.
No, Tim is.
Oh, that's right, Tim is, that's right, I remember. Okay.
I would also just say, I know things can get heated and feelings can get hurt at times, but it's our job to put that
It has
past
nothing to
us.
do with my,
Okay,
believe me, it's not having nothing to do with my feelings or her.
Okay.
It has to do with concerns of where we're going. Honestly, you guys are talking about this enforcement thing, and now you want to bring Miss Barbara Cross to head an enforcement thing. I just got a bad feeling.
We're not talking about.
No, we're talking about putting a key player in place for something that they're trying to push. Period. I'm being honest.
I appreciate your honesty. I don't share what you're talking about though, because Barbara's potential appointment to the committee has nothing to do with the item that you're talking about, which will come before the council at a future meeting, not before the beautification committee for discussion. So it'll all be done in open session. I'm sorry?
I'm abstaining.
Okay.
There you go.
Are you bendable?
No, I would like to postpone the appointment until Barbara can come. And first of all, I have had a long-term policy that I do not like to appoint by rubber stamping until the appointee is sitting in the audience and is able to answer questions. And I have held to that, and I have voted consistently, without fail, on that principle to begin with.
Mr. Craig, would you be willing to withdraw and
No.
table?
No,
You want to go through a vote?
I'd like you to call the vote on my motion.
Okay, call a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye?
Aye. All opposed? Okay.
If we're going to hold that motion, then
Okay. So let's bring it back up at the next meeting.
I'm sorry, there was another motion on the table, correct?
No.
Didn't you make a motion to table it?
Well, we haven't had a motion.
No,
to
we
table.
didn't, we didn't.
That wasn't seconded?
Now it's
Okay,
2 and
my-
2. It's automatically.
No, that's a vote. That's a vote on my motion. If there was another motion on the table, I wanted it to be voted on. If it was seconded, sounds like it wasn't.
There was no second.
Okay, thank you.
So we're first, motion and seconded to table it to the next meeting.
no, there
No.
wasn't.
No.
It wasn't ever second.
No. My motion was to appoint Barbara.
Right.
That,
And that just failed.
that failed.
So can we bring it back up at the next meeting, is what I'm saying?
No, it just failed.
I'll have to talk to legal counsel. I'm not sure if the motion has a split vote, if it's a de facto fail.
That's what I'm wondering. So if you could get back to us on that? Okay, if necessary.
Okay.
You know, because here's what I'm saying, what I'm hearing is that the reason it was voted against, at least in one case, was because of the absence of the person. And
Yes,
there's also the other council member who could be here that could also weigh in on it. So I'm simply saying, since we didn't vote against it, it was not voted down, why don't we see about bringing it back?
It was voted against it.
no. Her appointment was not approved,
Not
but
approved,
there
it
can
wasn't
be,
against.
and your stated reason was that she wasn't here to answer questions.
And-
So another motion can be made now to bring it back forth, if someone would like to make that motion. But Mark's point is that the motion may have carried, but I don't know.
The motion to appoint Barbara Cross onto the beautification committee has 2 for, 2 against.
That's
That
correct.
I would have to check the legal counsel to see if that's a fail.
Okay, well, let's just cover our butt. I make a motion to bring it back to the next meeting.
And invite Barbara to,
And if do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
There you go.
That's what you wanted, right? Yep. Okay, so it's unanimous.
Was that for?
Four, yes, that's what I'm going for.
Obviously, that wouldn't be necessary if the motion had passed. And so you'll let us know.
Yeah.
I will let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next item.
But it didn't pass.
Yeah, it's,
It was
it's,
voted, but it
I'll have to
didn't
talk
pass.
to their legal counsel.
DiMaggio request for extension of water service area. What the?
Okay, so I'm not going to read straight from the staff report. I'm going to summarize this. Our planner, our contract planner, Arlene, has been working closely with the applicant here. It originally started before it went to planning. This person who is applying to LAMCO has worked with our utilities department in what it would take to get water and sewer services to her house. And in the past, it hasn't been an issue. They work directly with our utility staff to find what would it cost to get water and sewer to our property. This was an unusual case because this property does not have an address. It is only an APN. So since it does not have an address, it is not within our service area. As such, it needs to be brought into the service area to receive water and sewer. So it's one of these things that is not typical. It's outside the city limits, but we serve outside the city limits. So if it's a parcel that has an address, they're most likely going to be in our service area. This parcel does not have an address.
Hold on a second. Could somebody close the door there, please?
Yeah, please.
Thank you very much, sir.
So since this property does not have an address, when we were looking to see about getting the services, part of it was, well, what's the address? That's when we realized, okay, this is not in the service area, so it requires a LAFCO, which is our county's authority for doing service agreements and annexations, things like that. So Arlene's been doing a great job of researching what's required to bring this property or the service to this property. And there's an application that the property owner has filled out. One of the key points that I wanted to make was, this is going to be at a cost that the applicant has to, the burden solely on the applicant. It's not going to be put on the ratepayers or the citizens of the city of Dunsmuir. So that has been assured, and we have before you an application that we're requesting to be approved by resolution so that it can go to LAFCO. Once it goes to LAFCO, it'll be up to them to make the determination if they feel that the city is the best way to service that property, or if there's some other needs.
May I ask a question?
Absolutely.
Have you driven up there? Because I can't even place it.
No, I haven't. I was hoping to go up there, maybe take my motorcycle up there. I heard it's kind of steep, so.
It is a steep, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I didn't make it.
You can't even drive up there, can you?
You can drive, there's a road there. And
I can't place it.
we do have water service that goes right by the property. That was the other part that was a bit confusing, is that we have services that are adjacent to that property, and there is a water main that goes in front of the property, but it's not served. And it can't be served unless it's brought into our service area.
Are there drawbacks to the city to do this?
Not that the cost, since the costs are being paid for by the applicant. I don't
And then he
see
pays us every month for the water.
Yeah, if there are
There's
lots
there's no drawbacks that you foresee,
we have
as long as they
capacity.
pay for the whole process.
Yes. Julie, what's the resolution number on this?
8.
8?
Bryce, any questions?
No, I don't think so.
Dave? I'll open the podium for public comment. No public comment, close the podium. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to approve resolution 2018-08 to extend Dunsmuir Water Service to assessors parcel 030-528-050 to apply to LAFCO for this property to be included into Dunsmuir service area.
Second.
I'll second. I would just say,
Just seconded by Bruce.
oh, did you second? I'm sorry.
No,
I thought
he's
you were-
asking.
I thought you were asking for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll second. My understanding is that this is currently a vacant property that they are asking for water service so that they can build a home. Even though it wouldn't be inside our city, it's,
They're
in
still
my
paying
opinion,
water.
mostly inside our city.
Yeah.
It's still paying water.
Right, exactly.
But we service that whole area.
I know.
So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None? It's unanimous. Discussion of future items for the next meeting. Anyone want to go over here?
If you don't mind, I just wanted to point out that Arlene did the staff report and did a lot of work on this, and she did a very, very good job.
Thank you, Arlene.
Thank you, Arlene.
Yeah.
Richard, tell Eileen thank you for it.
I'll do that.
Thank you, Arlene.
Any items for next one?
I have 3, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I would like to add the Patty Hill Memorial Tree discussion to a future agenda, hopefully the next one if we can.
I believe that the beautification committee has instructed and asked Jimmy Lamo to go ahead, and we all unanimously agreed, and he's going to do preliminary work to scope out and, you know, be able to give the full report when he's ready to the
Oh,
city
okay, my
council.
understanding was that the,
No,
was that-
he's going to be doing that when he is finished and bring it to the city council's attention.
okay, well then I move then that we add the Patty Hill Memorial Tree discussion to a future agenda when Jimmy provides the presentation to you. Is that okay?
Yep.
I mean, there's no objections?
No.
There was some discussion of the planning commission earlier, and I'm wondering if we should put that on a future agenda to discuss. We had a 5-member planning commission, 2 members were added. There always seems to be sort of a struggle to get a full 7-member
I think
planning
we-
commission.
We have to make
Change to the ordinance.
change the ordinance to a 5-member panel, but it seems like 5 members is,
Pretty standard.
yeah, and then have a 6 maybe as an alternate, but we never seem to keep 7 anyway.
What I would like on that, could we see what the planning commission thinks of the idea?
Sure.
I mean, that seems like the first step, right?
Yeah.
And that we can change.
I mean,
override
it's
it.
not really up to them, but okay.
No, but what I'm saying is we could bring it back and we could do it if we want to, but I'm
Sure.
saying asking them seems like a responsible thing to do.
Disrespectful.
Yeah.
Well, I can't say that there is an applicant that is currently in for a position there, and the planning commission was wanting to bring that application to the city council for consideration of appointing to the planning commission. So I know they're looking to appoint the sixth member, which would have been the seventh, but there was another resignation. That person wasn't able to make this meeting, so we postponed it to make sure that he would have the opportunity to, as Ms. Shanta stated earlier, to present any questions.
I hear that, and I think, I mean, it's related, but I think that this is an issue that's come up regardless of the current makeup of the planning commission anyway, whether it should go back to 5 or not, considering that there might be other ways to deal with the historic district sort of delegates that were added that made it a 7-member commission. Since we're considering other possibilities there anyway, it kind of brings it up again. So I think I'm in favor of having the council discuss this at a future meeting, just so that we can hopefully resolve it. If we want to get input from the current makeup of the planning commission now, that's fine with me, but I'd like to discuss it at a future meeting.
So not fast track it, but moving in that direction, and so ask the planning commission to consider it, and then we'll hear what they have to say afterwards.
Consensus, if I
Consensus?
Yes.
Is that okay, Marty?
To ask the planning commission?
think
what
the-
they think, I think, fine, go
Okay.
ahead and ask what the planning commission.
There's no objection.
Okay, but it's clear that, yeah, I mean, we're not really making a proposal and asking them to consider the proposal. I guess we're trying to understand the situation better and see if that would make more sense. I mean, one thing that I was gonna say was, I was just signing checks and we pay $800 every time we have to put something advertised in the newspaper, you know. When we have a larger planning commission, we have to do that more often because there's more turnover to fill those seats, right? So some cost savings to go back to a 5-member commission anyway. But it sounds like direction was given on that?
Yeah.
Okay. The final thing I had was the beautification committee asked for the facade inspection committee topic to be brought to the council. So I'd like to do that at the next meeting if possible. It seems pretty straightforward to me. I hope there are no, this doesn't seem like a very contentious
What are we gonna
issue.
talk about, right? We're gonna ask who's gonna enforce it? Who's going to?
No, there's no questions about who will enforce it. I don't believe. Essentially, there was a volunteer group of people that provided this service like every 2 years or every year or something like that. 100% volunteer. I was a part of it. At least once I was a part of it. And they simply fill out a simple little form and give it to the city and help provide some of that code enforcement. It's not code enforcement. It's
Code identification.
it's identification of an important part of our city only, and make recommendations. It's just recommendation. That none of that all could happen on its own. We don't need this group to do that, but we're hearing from the city manager that we don't have money for code enforcement. We know that that's the case. So since we now have a beautification committee, I propose that is an interested group of citizens to do that. So maybe they could just do that and provide the report. It's just like they would be providing a report tonight, just like Tim provided a report to us tonight. It could be as simple as that. That's one proposal. The other proposal is for this, I think the other proposal that came up was for the city council to appoint an ad hoc committee to provide that service every 2 years or something like that. If you could do that, I'd be fine with either. But I'd like to see it happen because it is something that we hear about a lot and is a simple service that volunteers could provide. It's literally like going around looking at the paint, oh, the paint's chipping here. I think the city should look at that.
It really does come down to the question of whether or not it should be situated with regard to the council making the decisions or whether the beautification committee can do it on its own. I think that's what the agenda item we would want to look at, right?
I'm not quite sure what they would, you know, if council's looking at me writing a staff report, I'm not quite sure what to put in the staff report. I mean, this type of thing was already brought to the city council not too long ago.
Mm-hmm.
And
with no resolution, correct?
well, no, it was voted down. And this was to redo the historical downtown, I forgot the acronym that was used for it.
The ad hoc.
The ad hoc, yeah. So the council unanimously voted it down. And this is kind of that thing coming back in a different channel. And let me just say that we are still doing code enforcement. We just don't have a code enforcement officer. So we're still sending out letters, we're still, doing what we can, but we're not as aggressive as we could be. But this year, so if somebody fills out one of these forms and turns it into the city, we'll look at the substantiating the form, and if needed, we'll send a letter. I'm not sure what the council's authority is in creating a volunteer group.
I think one of the things that would change is, it's a pretty minor change, but it could be as simple as adding that sort of description to the purview of the beautification committee. Conduct a yearly oversight of the historic district.
But is that giving them authority?
Not to do code enforcement, no.
No, but anyone can submit a complaint currently.
I understand that. What I'm trying to be sensitive to is that we have an interested group of volunteer Dunsmuirians who want to be a part of making our city more beautiful and are willing to do this. If the council doesn't think that that's something that we need more organization around, or if you don't, then that's the decision. But, that was the vote of the committee. We created the committee to provide us reports. They're asking us to take a look at it. I wasn't there when the vote happened, so I'm saying they, but us. It seems wholly appropriate to me to have a discussion again about it. We certainly have room on our council agendas.
Yeah, let's go ahead and bring that back up just one more time. And I think the idea would be, unless there's objections, the idea would simply to be to clarify this one last time and set up the structure so that we understand who has what role.
Absolutely, and I think it's an opportunity, thank you for that point. I think it's an opportunity to tell the beautification committee that if you want to fill out a form and do that, you can do it. Or not, or say that they shouldn't be doing that.
I said you'd rather not bring it back to the council.
Well, when do you want it to come back, and what is the priority of this? I am so far behind on things, so
I don't think this
bring
needs
out an old staff report.
I don't think this requires a staff report.
Okay, well, that's good. And the other
Bring
thing,
back the old staff report we
we
voted on.
may have 2 items to put in, congratulations, 2 items to put into old business here, possibly. So this could be number 2, or a new one since it's beautification and not the downtown store.
I'm tempted to want to just let them do their thing. If we want to wait on this and see if they can settle it on their own, maybe we don't need to bring it back.
Well, but they've asked us to.
Oh, that's
Yes.
right.
I mean, they've asked.
Okay, let's bring it back, and just no staff report. We'll understand, okay?
Yep.
Anything else?
Nope, that's all for me.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
Clear second?
Second. I didn't break your pen.
Oh, yeah.